Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Central Virginia fishing report with TaleTellers Fly Shop and Ethan Martin. How you doing, Ethan?
Oh, I'm doing great today, but a little tired.
Yeah, there you go. You got to tell everybody you've got great news.
Yeah, we had our third little girl this past week, so that's why we didn't get to record at our normal time. I figured, it just didn't pan out because she just decided that she wanted to show up that day.
Yeah, and she didn't wait around either because I texted you that morning and you're like, yeah, we're good. And then I reached out to you that afternoon. And you're like, we have a baby.
Yep. It's one of the blessings of life.
There you go. Well, I'm glad everybody's doing well, and I appreciate you, sticking to the schedule, even though, just for the record, I did give you the opportunity to not record. So I appreciate your dedication.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, people got to know when to fish,
Yeah, it's very important. And speaking of that, I think you are on the front end of the dog days of summer in Central Virginia.
Yeah, I would agree with you. We've got really low water, and it's running pretty clear, too. So it is definitely part of that transition time where you fish the mornings, you fish the evenings. That's going to be your best bite. And then your midday stuff, it's just, it's not as high numbers, but they fish around, no doubt. But it's definitely a transition time. It's weird.
Yeah, and to be clear, in Central Virginia, we're talking about fishing really for smallmouth and other warm water species at this point because the trout bite's pretty much kaput.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is a lot of people assume that summer means that's when you go fish for bass. That's when you catch your biggest bass. I know as a kid, that was what a lot of, my uncles and everybody, that's what they always did. They would go float in the summers. And, but, in terms of catching lots of fish or people that are actually like trophy hunting, typically the times that guys that are just hopping on the river and floating for the day, the times that they're out there, it's like from, we put on at 9 or we put on at 9:30, 10, we get off at 3. And those are usually some of the hardest times in terms of getting fish, except for earlier. But, it's just one of those things you got to kind of understand what's going on and adjust how you're fishing to, what's going on around you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it was interesting. We were talking before we started recording, and you were saying that your smallmouth pattern was pretty similar to, what was going on in southwestern Virginia. So does that mean that you are not where you usually expect to be on the topwater bite this time of year?
Yeah, for sure. It was kind of funny. I listened to Matt Riley's podcast, and pretty much everything he was saying, I've heard myself tell people, I don't know how many times, because the topwater, we just haven't had crazy like bug activity. So I'm not going to say we haven't had topwater because that's not true. Like if you go out and if you throw frogs or if you throw topwater bait fish patterns, we've had some pretty good days doing that. But in terms of just going out and throwing poppers like normal and just, let them splat, let them sit until the rings die down, give them a little twitch. That's the normal thing for this time of the year. But yeah, it's been a lot slower. So it's just one of those things, you adjust. And there's still fish to be caught in that, like absolutely no doubt. I posted a picture of a guy, Dakota, and he catches a lot of fish and he fishes a lot, but he was out and the big fish that I posted a picture of the other day was caught on a popper, just the normal poppers that we sell here in the shop. I've sold, I don't know how many of them. So it's one of those things you just adjust, what time of day you're going, where you're fishing. And then if you find like an overcast day, sometimes that's better, but I like sunny days personally. But everybody's different.
Yeah. And so, folks are really going to have to adjust a little bit because it's not, get in the boat or wait out and just, popper, or, like gurglers or things like that for kind of topwater bait fish. So, what's your suggestion for folks to kind of dial it in? I mean, the easy answer is you take two different anglers and you each fish a different way and figure out what's working. But if you're by yourself and you don't think that it's a consistent topwater bite, what should you be doing?
I would throw bait fish stuff. That was what I heard Matt mention in his podcast, and I've done the same thing, which is you have the guy at the front of the boat throwing a popper, the guy at the back of the boat throwing a streamer. But we do have a lot of bait fish in our water here in the James. and then the trips to that. So it's great. But it's like inch to 3 inch bait fish patterns. When you're putting your boat in, you'll see bait fish all over. I've just been wading downtown, and you'll see bait fish are like coming in behind you just to sit there and chill. And it's stuff like I've seen baby smallmouth, a bunch of little suckers, that sort of stuff. So it's one of those things that there's just so much food, I think, in the water that they are able to just in the mornings and evenings go out and hunt and eat a couple bait fish, or eat a whole school if they want. And then they can just go sit at the bottom of the river and just kind of relax through the summer or sit in the shade. And then we've had low water, which typically, low clear water, bright days, typically your fish are going to move to the shade. But it's just been slower than normal. And so I think one of the ways that guys have been catching them, myself included, is by using that strategy. So fishing on those shadow lines, that sort of stuff, but fishing with stuff that causes the reaction bite as opposed to a true feeding bite. And I think that that's one of the main reasons why we haven't seen them eating bugs as much, because, our fish are full. They can go and eat bait fish whenever they want. And so when a cicada or whatever this bug is supposed to imitate plops down on top of them, they don't have to go and eat it if they don't want to. Whereas if you've got something just like a frog, like the umpqua swimming frog, just crushing on the top of the water, then, that's a trigger or like a reaction bite that you're getting out of that fish. So it's a little bit of a different feed response. But that being said, it's hard for me personally, I've caught big fish on bugs. Matt Riley was one of the guys Matt and Matt Miles too. Both of those dudes are big on their bugs, the cork poppers and all that stuff. And so I fish them pretty hardcore, especially because I've caught a lot of big fish on them. But this year, I've kind of not lost heart, but I just haven't fished them as much because I've been catching good fish on the bait fish stuff. So it's just one of those things that you got to fish what you have faith in, and if what you want to do is go out there and just throw a popper all day, then do that. Don't listen to me say you're not going to catch fish doing that, because you will catch fish doing that. But your numbers is typically going to be better throwing bait fish patterns or stuff that's just bouncing off the bottom of the river, like a crayfish or hellgrammite, something like that.
Yeah, I was getting ready to ask you about the bait fish pattern. I would assume that's probably something you want to kind of fish high in the water column or mid column, and we're talking about like micro game changers, right? CK bait fish,
yep.
Small clousers.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm not throwing huge stuff. And like dungeons, I've been throwing a lot of like the laser legals, the Kelly Gout pattern. And so, they're not huge patterns. You're looking at the bait fish that you see in the water and then imitating that size. And just throwing a clouser, like you mentioned, those smaller clousers have been doing pretty well. So it's just one of those things. This year, I think if you go out and you just fish a clouser all day, or you fish one of those small game changers, you're going to catch some fish, which is nice. And then when you're really trophy hunting, then you've really got to focus in on your morning activity and your evening activity. So sunrise, or maybe even before sunrise, if you are willing to get up that early, which for me, I'll have an advantage with that now since I don't sleep at all with the newborn. So I can just go and fish before the sun's even up.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too, in Central Virginia, I mean, being on the James in the late summer with no shade, it's a warm day. So getting on and off the water is probably not the worst thing either.
Yeah, and that's just another thing to keep in mind. If you're going out floating or if you're going out just wade fishing, make sure you bring sunscreen, make sure you bring water, stay hydrated, because nobody wants to have any bad experiences or getting some massive, nasty sun issues because you went on an 8-mile float. And, like just for example, if you were to put in downtown and float to the Joshua Falls ramp at this time of the year with this water flow, that's an all-day, like an all-day float, because the water is at a slower pace because we don't have a ton of water. There's a couple of little rock gardens that you'd have to work through, and there's a lot of fishy water, so you're going to be fishing. So, I mean, you could put on at sunrise and get off at 9 at night. So just plan your floats accordingly. If you are trying to do an all day float, you might only be looking at, thinking maybe 4 miles or 3 mile float, just because if you try and pull an 8 or 10 mile float in a day at this water flows, that is going to be a long time, especially if you're newer to rafting or the area, because you don't know what water just to push through.
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, we love questions at the Articulate Fly. You can email them to us or send them to us on our Facebook or Instagram page. If we use your question, I'll send you some Articulate Fly swag, and we will enter you a drawing for something cool from the shop at the end of the season. And Ethan, before I let you hop, why don't you let folks know shop hours and where they can find you and where you are online and all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah, so you can find the shop is in downtown Lynchburg, Virginia, so we're right on the James. Then if you are trying to get products or just ask questions, anything like that, then you can either email us or just contact the shop directly. If you go to TaleTellersVA.com, you'll find our email address, you'll find phone number, you'll find all the products that we stock in the shop. So it's pretty easy and straightforward to get in touch with us. And then, like I said, anytime you got questions, just shoot them my way.
Yeah, and you may even answer them at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning now.
You never know. I have been responding to emails at weird times.
Well, listen, folks, you owe it to yourself to get out there and catch a few. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Ethan.
Tight lines.